Okay, so again, the start of the meditation is always very important to get the beginning right, because once the mindfulness is there and a sense of ease is there, then it's easy to direct the mind towards any object, really, any subject, anything you want to follow. But if the mindfulness is not present, it becomes difficult regardless. So the idea of waiting and just allowing things to calm down as you start out is actually very important. Knowing the right time to turn the mind towards whatever subject you want to pursue. So once the mind has a reasonable clarity, a reasonable awareness, a reasonable presence, that is when you can take it wherever you like. And what you can do sometimes, if you find it hard to settle down, is to use just a little bit of death contemplation. And if you feel at ease with this topic, this subject, then it's quite an easy thing to do in a way, with a little bit of imagination, with a little bit of building up a kind of perception of what this process is about. You can just allow it to unfold in the mind very briefly and very gently. And as you do that, the ideal is that the letting go process will happen as a consequence. So start off this kind of contemplation, whatever way you like, but here is one way you can do it. So start off by imagining yourself lying down on a bed in a kind of room that looks a bit like a hospital room, a room which is the final place you will be in this life. It's a very simple room. The door is closed. There are no windows. There is no art or anything on the walls. It's a bare, simple room. The bed has a thin mattress on it, and everything is just white. And you are clad in maybe some kind of white hospital garment. There's nothing of interest in this room. You have spoken to the last people in your life. You will not meet anyone between now and the final moment when you pass away. Maybe you have a few hours ahead of you, but you know that this is the end. You're lying there, waiting basically to die. What does that feel like? And as you do this, it is important to make it real. It is as if you are on the last deathbed, if you like, really approaching your death. Now is the only time you can be ready for this. So again, you are lying on this very simple bed, and your time is approaching. And as the time is approaching, you realize that there is a large number of things you have to give up in this world. You cannot take things with you past this point. So start to abandon those things. And the first and most obvious thing to abandon is all the things you think you own in this life. Your house, your belongings, all your clothes, your cars, whatever it might be. It all has to go. What does it feel like to abandon all the things in your life? Just go with that feeling, the letting go of things, the emptying out of your life, the emptying out of your mind. The next thing you have to let go of are all the people in your life, all the people you have met, your acquaintances, your friends, even your family members. Now they're going to have to carry on their own way, and you are going in a different direction. So let go of them, wish them well, but now you have to walk your own way. Can you feel that peace of letting go, of solitude, of just being by yourself in this world? There's something delightful about solitude. And if you can enjoy that, then the letting go is so much more easy. And you realize as the time is getting closer and closer, you can sort of see it now coming very, very soon. And you realize that so many of the senses of identity that you have in this world, that also has to go. Your identity in your family, in the society, in whatever organization you're part of, your identity through your education, your background, all of these things, even your gender, all of that belongs to this world. All that identity stuff has to be let go of at this point. All you carry with you forward are the good qualities in your heart. Can you feel that sense of lightness and emptiness inside? The identity we have is such a burden. It's such a heavy thing to carry around. And by letting that be, and just coming back to the good qualities within, it is as if life becomes lighter and brighter and much better as a consequence. What a strange thing that this should happen just as we are about to die. It's one of these extraordinary things. And then as you come even closer to your last moments, you realize even your body you're going to have to let go of. So now let go of that body. Let it be to one side and you carry on forward without it. And as you let go of almost everything in this world, except for the good qualities that you carry with you, there comes a point when you don't really know whether you are dead or alive. And suddenly you realize it doesn't really matter. It is not so important because the feeling of lightness, the feeling of brightness in the mind are just so beautiful. It is easy to let go of everything and just to carry on forward with all of these good qualities that you have built up during your life. And as the process gradually, slowly kind of carries on its own, you start to wonder why you ever were afraid of dying. Dying is such a beautiful process of letting go, of emptying out, of just carrying forward with the positive energy that remains. And you start to feel a sense of gratitude. Gratitude to all the people in the world who made this possible, to the Dhamma, to the Buddha, to all of these things that have made such a beautiful ending of life possible. And as you move forward, all you can think of is well-wishing to all the people in the world. May you all be happy, may you all be well. And now, just coming to the end once again, just take a few moments to review the meditation today. Again, ask yourself what letting go means in the context of meditation, and what it means to develop your perceptions. How does the process work? Sadhu. Oh, okay. Very good. Okay, I apologize for drinking in front of all of you. That feels a bit funny. Please don't be jealous. Yeah, have mudita instead of being jealous. Okay, so here we have a poster of One Fine Night. This is a very famous sutta called the Vajjiyamahita Sutta in Pali. You know this sutta? No. A very kind of a well-known verse from the Vajjiyamahita 131. And I'll read it out for you because these are famous verses. One fine night. Don't run back to the past. Don't hope for the future. What is past is left behind. The future has not yet arrived. And phenomena in the present are clearly seen in every case. Knowing this, foster it, unfaltering, unshakable. Today is the day that keenly work. Who knows? Tomorrow may bring death. For there is no bargain to be struck with death and his mighty hordes. The peaceful sage explained, it is those who keenly meditate like this, tireless all night and day, who truly have that one fine night. There you are, Majjhima Nikaya 131, the Vajjiyamahita Sutta, One Fine Night. Okay, so here we go. Let's get started here. Dear Ajahn, what is Miccha Samadhi? Can it be converted to Samma Samadhi? So much gratitude for this retreat, the wonderful teachings, teachers and fellow retreatants. That's great, so thank you for those positive words. Miccha Samadhi, the way it is defined in the suttas, is basically samadhi with wrong view. Yeah, and this is such a common thing in the world. Samadhi with wrong view means that you take that state of samadhi to be something it is not. You take it to be some permanent thing that you can hold on to, maybe somewhere you will go after you die and you'll hang out forever after. Yay! That's Miccha Samadhi. Yeah, there's no such thing according to the Dhamma. So the way to convert that is to get right view. You know, once you get right view, it becomes converted into Samma Samadhi. The experience is basically the same. It is the interpretation of the experience that is different. So for those of you who are already have some degree of right view, you just have to get the samadhi. That's all you have to do now. It's not like just get samadhi. It's, makes it sound very easy. So anyway. Is it good? Yeah. Okay, go to the next one. Dear Ajahn, thank you so much for your wonderful teachings. What is the benefit of Paritta chanting? Will chanting the Parittas help with meditation? If yes, which one? Thank you. So the benefits of Paritta chanting, I mean, all of this really goes back to the time of the Buddha, and the main purpose of chanting in those days was actually to remember the teachings. So you would chant in groups and you memorize it, and so you would remember them. But there are certain suttas that were chanted to kind of help people. Some of the very interesting things that you find in the suttas is where they would chant for the Buddha. Or actually, they wouldn't really chant, they would recite a sutta. And so the Buddha was ill, in another case, Mahakassapa was ill, in another case, Mahachunda was ill. These were all arahants. And then the Buddha would say to Venerable Mahachunda, please chant the Bojjhanga Paritta, or the Bojjhanga Sutta for me. And he would then recite the 7 factors of awakening, and the Buddha would be okay afterwards. It's kind of extraordinary. You kind of wonder what's going on there. And it may just be that he was too weak to really properly reflect on those things himself. And so then someone else reciting them and then hearing that would inspire you, to get inspired. And you see this, we're going to have a look at another sutta, I hope, towards the end of this retreat, about exactly that, how reciting a sutta brings joy, brings all the factors of samadhi, because at that time you are remembering that. And so this seems to be what's going on. And when that joy arises and the happiness of the mind arises, you remember the idea of awakening and all of these things. The power of that mind is so strong that the illness then presumably is overcome. So that is the idea of Paritta chanting in the suttas. It has a very specific meaning. There's another very famous chant called the Kanda Paritta. And there the Buddha says that if you are attacked by snakes or scorpions or various kind of creeping animals and things, you should chant the Kanda Paritta. And the way that works is that you are basically asking for protection from the beings or the devas that are in charge of these beings. It's like there are devas who are kind of are the overseers of certain areas in the human realm. And this is a very interesting idea, because this is an idea you find in most religions. You find that in the ancient Hindu tradition, you had a certain gods who were in charge of various things. You find that in Christianity, you had the angels and archangels and these kind of things. And that apparently refers to some angels are kind of in charge of a certain area, some of larger areas, some of entire nations. It's very similar to the ideas we have in the Dhamma as well, that there are devas there who are somehow in charge of their particular spheres. And so there is like a deva in charge of snakes, And so when it's kind of handy, right? So you do this chant, and basically what you're doing is spreading metta to those devas and also to those animals. And as you do that, it has some kind of effect apparently on those animals, and they don't kind of come after you, or they don't bite you, or whatever it is, because of the metta or how it works. That's how that sutta. That's what the sutta says. That's kind of how it's supposed to work. So the benefit is that you can get protected. So the Kanda Paritta is very useful if you are worried about animals. You can use that as a chant. And the other one is to getting out from illness, but that is more profound because it really requires an understanding of what these things mean, like the 7 factors of awakening. And even the Kanda Paritta, which is about metta, I think it relies at the end of the day, if you have a mind of metta, then it's going to be very powerful. If you don't have so much metta, it's not going to be as powerful. So it depends on how developed your mind is. It's always very helpful to have a developed mind in these things. Will chanting the Parittas help with meditation? Maybe. It depends. If you enjoy chanting and it is meaningful for you, and it brings a sense of joy, and it brings a sense of mindfulness, and it brings a sense of unity of the mind, then it is helpful, because you are bringing up those qualities that lead to good meditation. If chanting Paharada is just a mechanical thing for you, you just do it, blah, 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 and think about something else, yeah, then it is not so useful, because it doesn't have any meaning for you. It doesn't bring up any good qualities. So it is about, how it has to have some kind of mechanism, work in a certain way. Otherwise it doesn't work. So just know for yourself what works for you. When you chant Paritas, what happens to you? Yeah, and if it works, then great. If it doesn't work, let it be. Okay. Okay, Ajahn, do the fungi, plants and trees also have karma and rebirth? I learned that many trees choose to support each other, compete, even communicate, and so I guess they could also choose between right and wrong ways. Thanks. This is a very interesting area, and I don't really know the full answer to these things. The extent to which plants are conscious or not, and whether that is a kind of consciousness that leads to rebirth, or whether it's just a consciousness that is there. Very hard to be sure about, and the suttas are not entirely clear about this. The way that plants are talked about is that often it is said that it is commonly regarded as being one-facultied beings. So they have one kind of consciousness, the consciousness of touch. That is kind of how they were regarded. But the way the Buddha puts it, it sounds like it was just the way it was regarded in society, and it doesn't sound like it is the Buddha, thought that. But he doesn't rule it out. He doesn't say it is not the case either. He just says this is how it is regarded in society. And so it's very hard to know. And there is quite a bit of modern research whereby on plants that seem to say, as you quite rightly say here, they communicate with the environment. There is a sense that they know what is going on. They follow the sun. Some of these things might just be purely mechanical, but some of them, they seem to respond to to how you treat them, for example, and these kind of things, which is kind of extraordinary. And so there may be a rudimentary sense of consciousness there. But is that a consciousness that takes part in rebirth? And that is a different issue. And I think that, I don't know, there is no evidence for that in the suttas, that plants somehow are part of the round of rebirth. Unless they are part of their own round of rebirth, plants becoming, I don't know, but that sounds a bit strange. So it's one of those tricky areas, and I don't really know, it's kind of hard. I think we're going to have to rely on science to kind of answer this question partly, because from a Dhamma point of view, this does not seem to be an important issue. And so, for example, killing plants is not normally considered bad karma in the sutta. So if you kill a plant, it's not really said to be bad, unless there might be a being living in the plant, and maybe that is the consciousness that we are talking about. Yeah, this is a possibility, because what you do find in the suttas, you have this idea of beings taking a plant as their home. Yeah, it's like a deva or something like that, and that seems to be quite accepted in Buddhism. And that could be the kind of consciousness that you find in the plant. There's actually another being that uses it as its home, and then that becomes how it is conscious. So it's not really the plant as such, but the inhabitant of the plant that is conscious. So there are some ideas for you. Dear Ajahn, thank you for the wonderful sutta teachings. Can you please explain how to arrive at the wonderful breath? Yeah, I like that word, the wonderful breath. Yeah, how do you get to the wonderful breath? So the basic idea is that the wonderful breath arises by itself. Yeah, so you are aware of the breath, you are mindful, it is becoming more and more peaceful, everything is calming down, and as things calm down, because the whole feeling is very delightful and beautiful. Thank you for saving the animals. And because it is all very delightful and beautiful, the joy can very often arise. And when the joy arises, or or the happiness arises with the breath. That is the wonderful breath. Yeah, the joy combined with the breath, peaceful, delightful, cool. Yeah, you feel really relaxed, at ease, enjoying it. The bliss is starting to emerge. That is kind of the idea here. And so it's really just staying with the breath, allowing it to calm down, not involving yourself with the breath, maybe nudging the mind a little bit, yeah, towards having some positive experiences like gratitude, someone suggested today, or the famous Sila Nusat and these kind of things, where you nudge the mind in the right way. One way that Ajahn Brahm taught many years ago was having metta to the breath. Yeah, so you make you kind of have a sense of gratitude to your breath for being, supporting your life for all of these years, and you see the breath. You have metta towards the breath. Yeah, it's like your breath is your friend, and you have positive feelings towards the breath. And so and that of course very easily then can create a very kind of positive perception. Well, that is a positive perception, gives rise to positive feelings as a consequence. So this is roughly how the wonderful breath, the delightful breath, kind of, in theory, should arise. In practice, it is not always going to work, but sometimes it will happen. Dear Ajahn, in the notes to Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of Majjhima Nikaya 20, in regard to Vitakka Sankhara Santana, it says MA understands Sankhara here as condition, cause, or root, and takes the compound to mean stopping the cause of the thought. Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of what I was saying. Yeah, I was saying that Sankhara is the intention. It is the intention that is the cause of the thought. In other words, you have to want to think. There is no thought without the intention for it to arise. So that is the root. That is the cause. Sankhara is the activity of the mind that gives rise to the thinking here. Yeah? So it's a similar kind of thing here. This is accomplished by inquiring. When an unwholesome thought arises, what is its cause? What is the cause of its cause, etc.? Such an inquiry, okay, maybe, but what it says Vitakka Sankhara Santana, calming down of the Sankhara. So yes, it could be that you kind of look into the source and then you kind of deal with the causes, etc. That is one way of doing that. But another way of doing it is just not to feed the cause, not to feed that intention of the mind. And that is kind of what I was trying to say. I'm not sure how well I expressed it today, but the idea of just standing back and being aware. Because when you stand back, mindfulness, just awareness, takes the intention out of the situation. You are passive, you are a passenger rather than being the driver. And when you are the passenger, then the intentions calm down, and the thoughts that result from those intentions also calm down. So looking into causes, yes, that also works. Obviously, looking into causes is an important part of this, and especially when you look at things. Also, the first two methods. When you kind of want to overcome those thoughts and you know that they are bad and you want to turn your mind in a different direction, in a sense you are also understanding the causes. The causes for the ill will is because you're looking at the person in a certain way. And by changing the way you look at them from they are hurting me to I have compassion for them because they don't know what they're doing, that is a kind of a shift of this kind. But I think it is also there in the first two parts as well. But it could also be part of this one, I suppose. So can you explain what this means? So that's what it means. Yeah, you see the cause. Okay, so you have an ill will arising. What is the cause of that ill will? What is because you are looking at this person as someone who is hurting you. And then you think, okay, that's not a very wise way of doing that. So let me instead, look at this person in a different way. That is the most powerful thing. Or maybe you look at that cause and you just kind of allow that cause to kind of fade away just by your awareness and your attention to it. Maybe something like that. Yeah, so I think maybe slightly different ideas, but closely related. Yeah, all of these things are kind of depending a bit on the 5 ways, depending a little bit on how you interpret them, and so I think they are kind of all of these things are ways of dealing with this. The thing is that when you are meditating, you want to use slightly different ways than from outside of meditation. Outside of meditation, when you are moving about and everything is quite coarse, you can use more directed way of thinking. Yeah, you can reflect more. If your meditation is going well and then something negative happens, you are likely to catch it very quickly, and very often you just leave it. You observe it till it fades away, or you just go back to the breath or whatever, and it kind of fades as a consequence. So depending a bit on the circumstances, you will deal with things in different ways. And so I think this is part of this as well. So there may be different interpretations of the same thing here. Anyway, I hope that helps. So let's go on to the next one. Oh, another long question. Dear Ajahn, thank you again for your time. In the interviews, we touched on the fault-finding mind. At times, this mind has to be activated for constructive reasons, such as giving feedback in work situations or assessing someone's suitability as a friend, colleague, or associate in some way. How can I use it so it remains constructive and don't slip into something destructive? At times, even if it is constructive, one feels yucky. How can I purify myself, so to speak, after an unpleasant but necessary conversation? And actually, how can I skillfully walk away from others who are more actively engaging in fault-finding without offending them, without coming across as if I am judging them in some way? Thank you again very much. Okay, so yes, sometimes it is necessary to judge. And sometimes you can call it I don't know if it is fault-finding, however. Fault-finding is when you have a negative perception arising with that, and you are kind of maybe get a bit angry, or you don't understand that person in the right way. That is the real fault-finding, yeah? That negativity that comes with it. But a mere judgment of the situation is just understanding that someone, okay, here is a person who gets angry. You don't get angry with them for being angry, you just know that they get angry. And of course, you have to make those judgments sometimes. In fact, if they get angry, you have compassion for them, because angry people have a lot of dukkha. And so you pat them on the shoulder and say, I don't know what you do, but you are careful, how you deal with angry people. It's very unpleasant to be around people who have a lot of anger. And so judgment here doesn't mean that you kind of, you become negative about them. It just means that you know their qualities and their character. You know if they are suitable for a job. The Buddha did the same. The Buddha laid down rules for the monks. He knew that if you killed somebody, you shouldn't be a monk. So if you killed another person, sorry, I apologize. I didn't say I apologize. I'm really sorry, you can't be a monk anymore because you killed somebody. And that's okay. It doesn't mean the Buddha was angry with them or judged them or had negative opinions. He probably had compassion because he knew that person was trapped in that. But he still had to make that judgment. And so there is a fault-finding mind here. We have to understand exactly what it means. Judgment is one thing. Bringing up negative emotions joined with that judgment, that is something else. Those negative emotions are wrong. The judgment is right. The judgment is okay. So other people, so what do you say again? Finally, how can I skillfully walk away from others who are more actively engaging in fault-finding without offending them, without coming across as if I am judging them in some way? Sometimes you just know who your real friends are, and you hang out more with those real friends, and you don't hang out so much with them. You don't have to literally walk away. You do that in a wise way. If you are with them, okay, you hang out with them for a while, and then you have an excuse. Oh, I got to go now. I've got something to do. And then you go away, and you go, and then you don't hang out with them so much if you find out that it drags you down or has a negative effect on you. You know, it is very important, again, this judging also means that we judge who are really worthy to be our friends, who are the Kalyanamitas, who are the Papamitas, and then we make that distinction. Judgment is a fundamental necessity in life. Why is one a Buddhist? Because you have made some kind of judgment about what spiritual teaching are worthy to be followed. We cannot live without judgment, but what we can live without is the negative emotional reaction. Okay. Okay, dear Ajahn, I have also heard many people saying one should let the anger and frustration out. Anger is essential and useful, they say. How can one explain this with the taming of thought sutta? To switch, forget, replace the thought seems in denial of our emotions as humans. Thank you, Ajahn. Yes, this is the world, says this. The world is often the opposite of the Buddha. The Buddha says one thing, the world says something else. These are like modern psychologists. If you think that they understand the mind as well as the Buddha, you are mistaken. The Buddha knew how to overcome the really fundamental problems in life. Modern psychology is not geared towards that at all. It is kind of geared towards getting you in balance. And one of the reasons why modern psychologists will say this is because they know there is a danger in repressing your emotions. And that is true. But that is not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to repress things or suppress things. We're trying to overcome things by being wise. We are trying to look at people in a new way, in a way that a modern psychologist probably wouldn't even be aware of very often. So when you look at someone and you look at them as if they are hurting you, of course you're going to get angry with them. You're going to get frustrated. But if you look at them instead as a suffering being who is completely trapped in their habits, well, then you think about them very differently and you may very well have compassion. So the idea here is to learn a new way of observing the world. That is the idea here. And yes, sometimes you will still get angry, and that's okay. Sometimes you will get frustrated, and that is okay. I'm not saying that you should never get angry, because that can only really happen through suppression. I'm saying try to see if you can move gradually away from it and start to see the world in a different way. I can see a massive change in myself after 30 years as a monk. I used to be much more easily angered before, and now it is not so much of a problem anymore. You can see the change over time because you are actively using your perception to actually see situations in a new way, according to the Dhamma, according with these things. So yes, please don't suppress things, but try to use right view to approach things in a new way and see things in a new way. Don't be intimidated by modern psychology. Don't think that they sometimes they have really good answers and sometimes they can be useful. But when we're dealing with the Dhamma and the development of mind, we're dealing with something far more profound than anything you find in modern psychology. All right. Dear Ajahn, was jhana practiced in different spiritual schools at the time of the Buddha? Yes, it seems to have been practiced occasionally. It is very hard to know exactly to what extent, but if you read things like the Brahmajala Sutta, that talks about the various kinds of views in the world. The views that are wrong views, and some of those views are said to be based on jhana practice. And so from that it kind of seems that yes, it was practiced at that time, and they got stuck because they thought they had found the great, permanent, essential foundation of the universe or something like that. And that happened to be wrong, said the Buddha. Dear Ajahn, a small note to say a big thank you for your efforts. That is very kind of you to say that. The retreat has given me much to consider and put into practice for meditation and living well. How fortunate I am to be here at Jhana Grove, and also gratitude to Ajahn Brahm. With respect and much metta. Also a thank you to Lehar, Norlia, Mia, and all who help run Jhana Grove and keep it beautiful. Excellent. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That is good. Yeah, and that hopefully that gratitude will give you even some more good meditations as a consequence of putting it that way. So that's great. Hello, Ajahn. The thing that I am most afraid of in Jhana Grove is my dreams. They are often unpleasant and scary. It feels that all the fears I have in my life are showing up here. I don't know why. Any advice from Ajahn? Many thanks and appreciate it. Well, yeah, I mean, it is maybe an unusual environment. Yeah, it is. You are more on your own because you're not talking to anyone. And all of these things put you in an unusual situation. It's very rare to not talk to anyone for 9 days. Yeah, how often does that happen? And so that all of that can maybe be a bit uncomfortable for some people. And so what I would recommend you to do, and this is kind of the Buddha's recommendation for not having unpleasant dreams, is to do some more metta meditation. Especially before you go to bed at night, yeah, there may be the last meditation sitting in the evening here, do a metta meditation. And if you find it hard, find a guided metta meditation, yeah? And then you lie down and you have all these beautiful thoughts in your mind and you sleep so well. You wake up in the morning, happy, bright, energetic, ready for the next day. Come down here at 3 a.m. Yeah, and meditate with those early birds. There are a few people here who come very, very early in the morning. That's wonderful when you do that. And you do the meditation together. So that is really the best answer to that. Exactly why it happens, it is just your conditioning. We all have different conditioning. Your conditioning makes this happen to you. Yeah, and that is unpleasant, but you can overcome it. So just carry on and see what you can do with it. Dear Ajahn, apologies for returning yet again to my confusion about dependent origination spanning 3 lifetimes. My wife tells me to focus on kindness. Apparently even the Buddha came to this realization after attaining nirvana. While a friend of mine quips intelligence is artificial stupidity is 100%. Meanwhile, Norbu says this, 3 lifetime interpretation only appears in the Visuddhimagga and not in the Suttas. If true, it is a relief for me. Please comment. I wonder one day generative artificial intelligence will become a Kalyanamitta too. Dodgy Kalyanamitta, that's what I say. That artificial intelligence there is a reason why it is called artificial. And not to be trusted. I don't know, I think all of these things are a bit dangerous, especially when it comes to spiritual path, which really requires experience. You have to experience things. Artificial intelligence doesn't experience anything. All it does is regurgitate the experiences of others without having any experiences of its own. So that is kind of a bit dangerous. Anyway, so 3 lifetime interpretation, it depends, yeah. Some of the dependent origination sequence is only a 2 lifetime, like the 3rd Noble Truth, or the 2nd Noble Truth rather, is a 2 lifetime dependent origination. Others, and the one you find in the Mahanidana Sutta, the Digha Nikaya 15, is like a 2 lifetime. It ends with Nama Rupa Pacchaya Vijnana, Vijnana Pacchaya Nama Rupa, name and form conditions consciousness, consciousness conditions name and form. That's how it ends. And it doesn't really go into sankharas and avidya, into ignorance and willed activities. So that is kind of a 2 lifetime. Or, as I just discussed with someone at the interviews today, it can also be considered like an infinite lifetime, or maybe not infinite, but unending lifetime, because that nexus of nama rupa, name and form, conditioning consciousness, and consciousness conditioning name and form, really goes back as far as you want to see. So if you go back into past lives, that's all you see. You can go back and back and back to 1,000,000 past lives, and you see this mutual conditionality between these 2 things as far as you want. So in that sense, dependent origination can be considered an unlimited number of lifetimes. Yeah, that's another way of thinking about it. So the reason why but generally speaking, it is considered like a 3 lifetime exposition, and I think there are very good reasons for that. First reason is that jati, birth, is explained as birth, as physical birth, the appearance of the faculties, the coming together of the five khandhas, the appearance of the body. It kind of obviously means birth, independent origination. There's no doubt about that. And the other end of the things, where it's also considered like a lifetime thing, from sankhara to vijnana, from willed activities to consciousness. That too, if you look at the way this is explained in the suttas, it very often starts with a consciousness at birth, or even before birth, while you're still an embryo or something like that. And so, the way it is talked about in the suttas always have the sense of something arriving from a previous life, then kind of getting then a new footing in the present life, and then developing and becoming a human being. The whole emphasis of dependent origination is that in the suttas. And so I think the three lifetime imputation is basically the right framework. It's basically the right way of thinking about things. But it doesn't matter that much whether it's 3 lifetimes or 2 lifetimes or endless lifetimes. That is not the main thing. The main thing is that it involves rebirth one way or another. That is the most important thing. Because some of these modern ideas of dependent origination is that it doesn't involve a rebirth. It's like the birth of thoughts or the birth of mind moments. The problem with that is that is not how the word birth is used in the suttas. It is never used like that. It always means real birth, coming into existence in a new life. And so that whole idea, to me, is sidestepping what dependent origination really is about. It's like using modern psychology, because rebirth, it's just kind of an ancient superstition. The Buddha the Buddha, he can just kind of accepted it from the existing culture, and so we have to kind of check out those ancient superstitions. The problem is that this is kind of a modern conceit, the idea that we are more sophisticated spiritually than the ancient Indians. When I think it is the opposite. They were more sophisticated spiritually than we are. We are the ones who don't understand. We are the ones who are trapped in our culture, the culture that does not believe in rebirth very often. Actually, it's coming back again very strongly now, the idea of rebirth in the mind and all of these things. But traditionally, we haven't believed that. And that is a culture trapping of our own. So to my mind, it's not the Buddha who was trapped in the culture. We are the ones who are trapped in the culture. The Buddha is very clear, very specific, that there is rebirth. He says that. And if the Buddha says there is rebirth, why on earth wouldn't we go along with that? The Buddha is this extraordinary spiritual master. He makes it very clear that he knows there is rebirth. So you think, okay, well, if the Buddha says it, that's kind of, that makes a big difference. And it's not just the Buddha who says it, other people say it too. People who are very worthy of our trust and our confidence. And so that is the most important thing. It's not about whether it is 3 lifetime or 2. What matters is that it is about rebirth. That is the important point. And Norbu, I don't know about Norbu. Norbu is artificially, says this is the Visuddhimagga interpretation. Yes, it is the Visuddhimagga, but it's also the Sutta interpretation. And so I don't know what the Norbu has been reading, some dodgy text probably, and spitting out some dodgy comments. This is the problem with artificial intelligence: junk in, junk out, and that's kind of what happens sometimes. All right, so let's go on to the next one. Dear Ajahn, how should Buddhists face the future with the advancement of AI? Can AI aid us in our spiritual journey? Can we have AI monks? Or maybe AI nuns, I don't know, AI monks and nuns. So, we are in the middle of this kind of AI revolution right now, and no one seems to know exactly what's going on or what's going to happen. And it seems to be, I don't know, some people say it's way overhyped, other people say it's underhyped. Usually those people who say it's overhyped are usually right. Yeah, things always tend to be overhyped at certain times because they want more investment, they want to attract money, and so overhyping is kind of par for the course very often. And so, we don't know what's going to come of this. We don't know what's going to actually, at the end of the day, if it's going to be all that great or not. I think in certain areas probably be very useful, in other areas not so useful. But the main lesson for me is just the lesson of uncertainty, unpredictability. People get really scared of AI, or they are worried about what's going to happen to our future. Are we all going to lose our jobs? We're going to have one day work weeks. We only work 1 day a week, and there's all of these kind of incredible worries about the future. And to me, this is exactly the idea of impermanence, of uncertainty, of unreliability that the Buddha talks about. And so it's just more fuel for the spiritual path, really. Okay, maybe AI really is dangerous, maybe it's not. Who knows? What's going to happen with climate change? Who knows? What's going to develop these wars everywhere? How are they going to... Who knows what's going to happen? Everything is just so uncertain. And all of these things is just another nail in the coffin of the world, the world being unreliable and uncertain. So chuck that world out. It is just too uncertain. And that uncertainty itself is a huge amount of dukkha. So the more we can put that to one side and come back to the spiritual path, that to me is the best way to use the reflection on AI, as just more unreliability and uncertainty in the world. Can AI aid us in our spiritual journey? Maybe. Sometimes maybe depending on how you use it. You have to ask your questions incredibly carefully. If you ask a very general question, they may turn out to be very dodgy, like this Norbu here, Norbu, dodgy answer. Maybe you asked the wrong question. Maybe you asked about, 3 lifetime. You should ask specifically about dependent origination in the suttas, in the Pali suttas. Then you may get a more reliable answer. If you ask too generally, it would draw information from a large number of sources. And some of those sources are going to be, not going to be as reliable as the suttas. So maybe it can be useful, I don't know. But use it with great care, because sometimes they come up with things that are really dangerous. Sometimes it may look incredibly good. The language may be very polished because they're quite good at using language in good ways. They are well read, these AIs. And so, but don't let yourself be fooled by polished language. It's the content that really matters. An AI monk, that's impossible, because remember the point about meditation is to overcome suffering. AIs, they don't suffer. They don't have any feelings. They are just machines. They are like, so there's nothing there. There's nobody home. That's kind of the thing with AIs. They're just spitting out stuff. All right. Okay. Dear Ajahn, many years ago I had a Christian born-again experience. It felt like a Buddhist samadhi on reflection. I had many years in faith, but felt the limits of Christianity. I eventually came to Buddhism because I knew it would teach me deeper ways. I have to take responsibilities seriously and meditate. By the way, I still sing for the church choir and have good Christian friends. Everyone is where they are at, I feel. I feel so free being able to accept all the ways and the stages. I'm very grateful to have a Jhana Grove and you monk guys and nuns as well. Okay, good. So this is the thing, is that these experiences that we have, they are available to everybody. They're not Buddhist experiences as such. These are experiences that are there, and you can have these as a Christian, you can have them as a Muslim, as an atheist, as anyone really, because the idea that the mind comes together and experiences joy depends on qualities like your kindness, your generosity, your ability to sit still, and all of these kind of things. And these are just ordinary human things and are really not related to any particular religion. So absolutely, So thank you for that. Okay, dear Ajahn, I'm getting a bit confused about the law of karma. If my current conditioning is predetermined by past karma, then how would I still be able to change my actions in order to create better karma for the future? Or is it that past karma only determines what happens to me, but not what I do with the situation? So, yes, that's basically right, what you're saying there. And so karma is not everything here. Yeah? Karma does not determine everything in your life. Some things in your life are, you become a human being, and that is basically comes because of karma. Then exactly what happens in that human life will depend on all kinds of things. Yeah, everything that happens to you, it is not related to a specific action in the past. If you are human, you can expect a large variety of things to happen to you. Sometimes you will hurt, you will hit your toe against something, or you will get an illness, and that's the nature of having a body. It's not because of a specific karma in the past. So sometimes we overstate the idea of karma in Buddhism. Karma is not everything. The Buddha specifically says that in the Suttas, that karma is not everything. And but you're also quite right that then there is the thing how you react to these things. Yeah. So something bad happens to you, you can wail or you can learn from it. And this is kind of the distinction here. And one of the things that decides how you react will be the Dhamma. The Dhamma becomes a factor that determines your reactions in the world right now. So this is why mindfulness is very useful, because if you are mindful, something happens to you, instead of just habitually reacting to what is happening to you, mindfulness will allow the Dhamma to come in. Okay, how should I react to this? Okay, what does the Buddha say? What is the Dhamma here? And then you turn in accordance with the Dhamma, and you change. Instead of following your old habits from the past, you're now moving in a different direction as a consequence of that. So the Dhamma comes in the present, as a present condition, and that merges with all the forces from the past, and then you can go a new way. That is also conditioned, of course. Ultimately, that is also conditioned, but it shows you that the conditioning is not fully fixed by the forces of the past, but also comes from other places and other sources. Okay, we have the last question for this evening here, so that's good. So, hello Ajahn Brahmali. I read a few of Ajahn Chah's books, and he seems to be quite strict, very different from his disciple Ajahn Brahm, who lets you do whatever you want. Who has written this question? How do I reconcile these two approaches from the two teachers whom I deeply respect? I also have difficulty finding a balance between when to be disciplined and when to treat myself with kindness. I suppose that is what you taught today, to learn to be reflective and skillful in my practice. May you be well and happy here. So, yes, Ajahn Chah may have been strict. I mean, it's very hard to know exactly how strict he was. Different people have different stories of Ajahn Chah. It depends on your own proclivities, which Ajahn Chah you see here. Some people see a strict Ajahn Chah, some a kind Ajahn Chah. Yeah, but I think he probably was more strict than Ajahn Brahm. But remember that the idea here is that everyone is different. When I teach, I don't try to be like Ajahn Brahm, because that's madness to try to be like Ajahn Brahm. I can't be like Ajahn Brahm. Ajahn Brahm is this great meditation master, and I'm just me. And so trying to be like Ajahn Brahm, it doesn't make any sense. Also, Ajahn Brahm has a certain style. He likes to tell stories and jokes and have a good time. That doesn't really work for me in that way. I can't do that. If I try, you get a fake version of me. I don't want to be fake. There's enough fakeness already in the world. So everyone has to be themselves. What matters is whether you are true to the teaching of the Buddha or not. That is what matters. And true to the teaching of the Buddha can be done in different ways. Most importantly, you have to keep the Vinaya rules. So we do that. Then you have to follow the way of the suttas, the way of sense restraint and these kind of things. So you try to do that to the best of your ability. But then actually how you implement that will vary a lot. And Ajahn Brahm is a very kind of hands-off teacher. Ajahn Brahm is like, he inspires you, but he doesn't really tell you what to do. He doesn't say, do this, do that. Yeah, it is up to you to make sure you practice the path well. So it takes quite a bit of responsibility to do the right thing. Yeah, so you have to implement kind of his instructions, and then you're doing things in the right way. Whereas Ajahn Chah, his approach was probably not quite like that. Yeah, one of the big differences is also that Ajahn Brahm has a much more understanding of the suttas. He knows what the Buddha taught. He knew Pali. He has read most of the suttas, even though it's kind of, these days it's kind of fading away a bit. I think it was back in the late 80s and early 90s that he read the suttas. We're talking about 30 years ago now. So he doesn't have that kind of up-to-date kind of knowledge. Still, much more than Ajahn Chah. Ajahn Chah, he learned some very basic things. He tried to read the Visuddhimagga, but that wasn't really very successful apparently, and a few things like that, but he didn't really have a broad understanding of the suttas. He did, however, understand the rules, and those rules were then understood in accordance with the way things were done in Thailand. And very often in the Thai forest tradition, they kept these rules in very strict ways, in accordance with the commentaries, in accordance with all of these things. Whereas the way we look at the rules slightly differently. We see what the rule is, but we don't necessarily always follow the commentarial interpretation of these things. Yeah? The commentaries are just one particular viewpoint on how the rules should be followed, and they are not binding on monastics. They are more like suggestions for how some people understood these rules at a certain time, in a certain context, in a certain society. And so I think both of these approaches are okay. Yeah, what matters is that you follow the suttas and the Vinaya. That is the important thing. And as far as I can tell, both Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Brahm do that in their slightly their own way, depending on their personalities. Okay, everyone, that is all for tonight. So please have a really very good night's rest, and we'll see you back again tomorrow morning here. Okay, let's do the Arahang Sammasambuddha together. Arahang Sammasambuddha